Well, it's time for another entry in our Top 10 video series. Previously, we've covered the top 10 episodes of the show, the top 10 worst episodes of the show, the top 10 mistakes you missed in the show, the top 10 things you didn't know about the show, and the top 10 villainous vehicles. Today, we add another one, the top 10 things you didn't know about Knight Rider's pilot episode. Series creator Glenn A. Larson crafted an amazing story to kick off this iconic series, and we're going to dive into some of the lesser known facts, such as one main character's last-minute name change, how Glenn Larson's son contributed a key prop to some scenes, and how, knowingly or unknowingly, it created one of the most gruesome scenes in the entire series. So, without further ado, here are the top 10 things you didn't know about Knight Rider's pilot episode. Be sure to let us know what top 10 lists you want us to cover in the future in the comments below. And be sure to like and subscribe if you aren't already, so you will receive notification of our future videos. Alright, here are the top 10 things you didn't know about Knight Rider's pilot episode. Number 1. Tanya's Talker. Actress Phyllis Davis already had dozens and dozens of film and TV roles to her name by the time she was cast as Tanya Walker, Knight Rider's first villain, and the lady whose actions in the pilot set up really the entire series. Davis got her big break in the 1960s with bit parts in some Elvis Presley movies, and went on to have recurring and starring roles in shows such as Love American Style, Vegas, Fantasy Island, and Magnum P.I. But did you ever notice how, in Knight Rider, when we see and hear her talk, something doesn't sound quite right? You see, Davis was born in Texas, and as such, she had a little bit of a Texas twang to her voice. Series creator Glenn Larson didn't think that Tanya Walker should have such an accent, but he really wanted Davis for the role. So the production simply dubbed her voice in post-production. Who actually provided the voice for Tanya Walker as we hear it in the pilot? Well, we may never know. But here's a clip from Davis's time on Vegas where we can hear her real voice.
If he were making changes that big and handing over control and going on an extended vacation...
You know, the papers from the Wall Street Journal to the National Enquirer.
You want me to call Lieutenant Nelson and see if Rodmore has a record?
I don't even get to call the shots around here anymore.
We're a well-trained team, Coach. Now, what are you going to do?
Number 2. When 3 cars aren't enough. When Glenn Larson set out to start filming, he enlisted the help of the Vista Group, a product placement firm, to help secure some brand new 1982 Trans Ams that could be converted into kit. Vista, through their relationship with Pontiac, were able to get 3 black and gold Trans Ams right off the Van Nuys GM assembly line. From there, Larson set out to film the first footage of the new show, to present it to NBC in hopes that they would pick up the series. They did, obviously, so Larson worked to film the rest of the footage needed for the first episode. However, it became evident that 3 cars just was not going to be enough. Larson managed to acquire a 4th car, first most likely used as Michael Long's stock Trans Am, and later converted into a kit car. At this point, they had the Hero car, a backup to the Hero car, a stunt car, and a roll-caged acrylic windowed jump car. They also built the Flivver car, a dune buggy chassis with a rubber Trans Am shell covering it. We did an entire video on the Flivver car, so be sure to check it out. The show made do with these 4 Trans Ams and the Flivver car for over half of the season before acquiring a few more. Number 3. Paging Dr. Miles. We all know Devin Miles as the prim and proper executive director of the Foundation for Law and Government. So why am I bestowing the title of Doctor on him? Well, technically, I'm not. You see, in the original draft of the pilot, written by Glenn A. Larson on a beach in Hawaii in March of 1982, Devon's last name was actually Shire. Larson even goes so far as to describe him as a Sir John Gielgund type. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. The doctor who patches Michael up was named Dr. Miles, and was of course played by Richard Anderson. No, not that Richard Anderson. The one of $6 Million Man fame. By the time the pilot aired, Devon's last name was changed to Miles, and Dr. Miles became Dr. Ralph Wesley. However, take a close look at his name tag in the episode. You'll see it still says Dr. Miles on screen. Number 4, Styrofoam and Tape. With a limited budget and not a lot of time, Larson set out to begin filming the pilot. While some parts of kit, such as Michael Chaffee's beautiful interior, were extremely well done, especially given the tight time constraints, other parts of the car's build were, well, slightly less professional, let's say. Take a look first at the backup to the hero car, specifically the overhead console. Besides being the wrong shape as compared to the hero car, white wire alert, note that it's also made of styrofoam. We only see it in a few scenes here before the console was replaced with a still inaccurately shaped piece, this time made of fiberglass. And while the interior of the hero car was beautifully finished, the exterior was not. In fact, the exterior was a completely stock Trans Am with the gold decals removed and the gold lower accent paint covered with gaff tape. This car even still had its stock front bumper, as you can see in this very early promotional shot. Very quickly though, before the pilot was done filming, a kit bumper was added and the body properly refinished to match the other cars. Number 5, a mean machine. Most episodes of Knight Rider feature some form of comic relief. However, for Knight Rider's pilot, that was sort of an afterthought. Once filming was completed, Larson realized the pilot ran about 7 minutes shorter than what they needed. He quickly wrote 3 standalone vignettes of the 2 car thieves trying to steal the car. Larson brought in Michael D. Roberts and Burt Rosario to play the car thieves, Jackson and Brown. According to Roberts, Glenn Larson was at the audition, which is something that doesn't usually happen. I had just starred in The Fall Guy along with Richard Burton, and, based upon that success, Mr. Larson auditioned me directly. That episode of The Fall Guy was titled The Reluctant Traveling Companion, and coincidentally, Robert's character was also named Jackson in that episode. Because these scenes were added at the last minute, Larson also needed to come up with a car for the thieves to drive. That late 60s Firebird hot rod scene in the episode belonged to Glenn Larson's son. Roberts recalled getting admonished for burning rubber every time he pulled out. Larson enjoyed the car thieves so much that he toyed with the idea of bringing them back in a future episode, something that sadly did not happen. Number 6, Larson's Lucky Charm. Series creator Glenn A. Larson wanted an all-star cast for the pilot, and that included his lucky charm, actress Pamela Susan Shoop. Shoop appears in the pilot as Maggie, no last name, a struggling waitress trying to raise her young son. Shoop would later reappear as Marta Simmons in the season 4 premiere Night of the Juggernaut. However, this wasn't her first time acting in a Glenn Larson production. Shoop appeared in the pilot or early episodes of a number of Larson's shows, to include Magnum P.I., BJ and the Bear, The Fall Guy, Galactica 1980, Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, and in a post-Knight Rider role in Larson's short-lived series, The Highwayman. And while not all of these series would be considered a success, some were, and having Pamela Susan Shoop on board certainly helped. Number 7, the Bionic Office. One of the permanent sets for Knight Rider was Devon's office. Very stately in design, the set changed very little over the 4 years the show was in production. You've probably noticed that, before it was Devon's office, the set was used as Michael's recovery room in the pilot. We even get a nice shot from the fake balcony that shows off the stone railing, designed to mimic the exterior of the Knight estate, which in reality was Greystone Mansion in Beverly Hills. Side note, we only see that stone railing a couple other times in the entire series. Devon's office set was also used as Devon's bedroom in Inside Out. Just another little piece of trivia for you. But did you know, years before Knight Rider, there was another Universal Studios production that used bits and pieces from Devon's set? There were rumors that Oscar Goldman's office from The $6 Million Man was the same set, only redressed for Knight Rider. But that's not the case. However, many bits that we see in Devon's office were seen throughout The $6 Million Man. Everything from Devon's desk, to the ornate bookshelves, to the clock on the fireplace mantel, to the inkwell on Devon's desk, to an ashtray or whatever this is, to vases, and even to paintings. Universal Studios really dug into the prop department's treasures to furnish Devon's office. Number 8, Face Off. Knight Rider's audience spanned generations, from young kids to great-grandparents. Because the cast and crew knew that they had young, impressionable kids watching each week, the show really tried to steer away from gruesome acts of violence. In fact, it's rare to even see any blood in the series. Rare, but not completely gone. But there's one scene that was the exception, and you have to look really closely to notice it. In the pilot, Michael is betrayed by Tanya Walker, who pulls out a gun and shoots him point blank in the forehead. Michael falls backward onto the hood of his car before collapsing to the ground. That scene doesn't really show much that one would consider gruesome, but take a look a bit later in the episode when Michael is recovering at the Knight estate and is having traumatic flashbacks of being shot. You can literally see his face being blown off, with bits of flesh flying all over the hood of his car. It's actually quite remarkable that a graphic scene like this, albeit briefly, made it into the aired episode. Number 9, Larry's Perm. Actor Larry Anderson has had a long and successful career playing bit parts in dozens of movies and TV shows over the last 5 decades. But we remember him solely for the few minutes he played Michael Long in the opening minutes of the pilot. According to Anderson, my understanding was that a new opening for the movie was written very quickly, which included an overnight casting session to find the actor to play the role of Michael before the makeover. Obviously, the choice for an actor was narrowed to someone who had the same approximate physical features, height, weight, hair, etc., as Hasselhoff. The casting director knew me from other projects and called me late in the afternoon to come to a casting session at Universal to meet the producers. I got a call the same evening to report to the set the next day. As I remember it, the makeup and hair department did all the curls in my hair to match David's natural hair because mine is straight, and onto the set I went with warm script pages in hand. I hadn't even read the script and didn't have the time to think it through. Therefore, I later chose not to be credited in the episode, as no actor would lay claim to a performance where someone else is speaking his lines for him. This was a one-day shoot. I never saw a writer nor read the script except for my pages. When I shot the part, I had no idea of the story other than a brief fill-in by someone on the set. I know nothing about the car, nor did it hold any special significance for me at the time. All I knew that I was to run out of the casino, jump in a car, and start driving. It's fairly obvious that the studio had to dub my lines as only the face changed in the transition from Michael Long to Michael Knight. Number 10, Those Familiar Guys. Much like Pamela Susan Shoop, Glenn Larson brought in a couple of other guys that he tended to use often to launch his shows. Dennis Fimple and Bill McKinney, known to the Knight Rider fans as Deke and Kyle from the pilot, the 2 police officers who pull Michael over for being plumb asleep at the wheel. All of the scenes in Knight Rider that feature these guys were filmed for the pilot presentation. a 30-minute shortened pilot used to sell the series to NBC. In fact, when the show was picked up and they came back to film the rest of the pilot, these guys didn't have to come back as all of their scenes were already filmed. While both actors appeared in numerous early Glen Larson shows, they also appeared together a few times. A year before Knight Rider, in the pilot of The Fall Guy, both Fimple and McKinney portrayed policemen named Renfro and Taggart. Even going back to the early 70s, they both appeared in the pilot of Alias Smith and Jones. Separately, Dennis Fimple was also in the pilots or very early episodes for Larson-created shows Battlestar Galactica, BJ and the Bear, The Misadventures of Sheriff Lobo, Manimal, and Automan. Glen Larson sure helped keep food on the table for these guys back in the 70s and 80s. And that wraps up our list of the top 10 things you didn't know about Knight Rider's pilot episode. How many of these things did you actually know? Probably not all 10. Let us know in the comments below if there are other top 10 lists you want us to cover. Thanks as always for watching. We know that when it comes to new Knight Rider content, you have many options. We're glad you chose us. Well, actually, you don't have many options. This is pretty much the only game in town. But thanks anyways. We'll catch you next time.
Hello, friends. It's me, Kit. When I'm not out fighting crime, I like to follow my friends at knightriderhistorians.com. Check it out.